Hello, everyone. How are you doing? There's already a lot of people here. Um, so welcome to Godot tomorrow. Today, you might hear my voice. I'm a little bit under the weather with the two conferences from last week, but we're not going to talk about that. Today we have a special guest. Today we have Clayjohn. So without any further ado, let's go into the call. Let me see here. It's first time I do this, so there might be some issues with the stream, but please write on chat if you don't hear properly, if you see any weird thing or anything like that. We're going to be doing a Q&A, so if you have any questions, please post them on the forum. We're going to read all those, and also we're going to read from the chat. So, okay, let's go. Welcome, Clay.
Hi,
How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's early here, so if I seem a little bit sluggish, my apologies, but I'm excited to be here.
Great. It's great to have you. Like every time I do a stream, we get like a million questions that are rendering related. So it was great to get you to answer those.
Yeah.
But just in case somebody don't know you yet, like can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do in Godot?
Yeah, so I've been around the Godot project for many years now. I started using Godot in version 2.1 and started contributing to Godot 3.0. And I've always contributed mostly on the rendering side of things. And at this point now, I'm the lead of the rendering team. I organize weekly rendering meetings as well as basically oversee kind of the features that make it in. In practice, what that means is I review all of the rendering PRs, which is a
A
lot.
lot.
And what comes in is mostly just based on what people are interested in contributing, and then I vet the changes and I work with contributors to help make sure that the stuff that they've worked on is production ready.
Nice. And what is actually like the things, I know there's a lot, but what are the things that the rendering team is currently working on? So we can give like a little bit of context. So if people want to ask more about those, just to give some pointers, then we can jump into the straight questions.
Yeah, different things. I mean, everybody has their own special interests, and because we're all volunteers, uh, people work on what they're interested in, what they need for their games. But some, special highlights that we're hoping to squeeze in, but might not quite make it for 4.6 that are being worked on now are support for HDR screens. That's something that's been a long running task, and it's in the end zone. And we're really hoping to get it in this release or next. Another person is working on texture streaming, which is a method that lets you iteratively increase the resolution of your textures at runtime and decrease resolution in order to meet a VRAM budget. There's a lot of work ongoing supporting Metal 4, which should bring some performance improvements for Apple silicone devices. Also exciting to me is a lot of ongoing work on the D3D12 backend. For the third time this year, we've had the Vulkan drivers completely break on Windows. And so we're at this point, unfortunately, accepting that we're just going to have to switch to D3D12. And we're in the final kind of, uh, again, end zone of getting that functional and working really well so that we can switch over to D3D12 by default. So those are some of the big things. There's lots of stuff going on because there's lots of contributors, but I
Yeah.
think those are some of the exciting things.
Yeah, I was able to see the HDR in person because I don't have an HDR screen. And at Godot Fest, Alan was around with a screen showing the HDR, and it looks super cool. But is there anything that you are looking forward to the most, like something that it's something you like in particular?
Yeah, for 4.6, my most anticipated feature is the new screen space reflections for sure. The old system has been a thorn in my side for I well since like early 4.0 days. I had wanted to rewrite it, and uh, just other bugs and priorities kept getting in the way. And finally, someone, Scythe, took the time and fully overhauled our screen space reflection system. And it's now faster than it was before. It has a longer range and it looks better. So it's just better in every category, and is now something I'm confident is actually usable for your game. So uh, very excited to see that.
Great. Yeah, I tried it out and it looks super cool. So like, so looking forward to see what people do with it because I'm not very talented with that. But okay, now that I see the chat is already asking questions, I will be copying those and adding them. But we're gonna go first through the list of the questions that people asked already, starting with someone that's here on chat as well, which is Saul. And we have here Saul asked on the forum, what's the status of HDDA GI or Dynamic GI PR? Is someone gonna take over it, or Juan is going to continue it still?
Yeah, so the status is it's waiting for somebody to take over it. It's had that status now for, I don't know, a year or 18 months. Basically, the story is Juan was working on it when he had a lot of free time. It was a fun thing he was working on in his evenings. He got a pretty good proof of concept finished, but it's not production ready code by any means. And of course, as always happens when you're working on new GI techniques, once you're 90% finished, you realize all the things that you could do better. So, he realized that in order to actually finish it the way he wants to have it finished, he needs to go back and do it again, and he just doesn't have the time to do that. And unfortunately, we don't really have anybody with the expertise to take it over and finish it in their free time. And since we rely on volunteers, I mean, I don't know where you're going to find a volunteer who's able to spend the next 6 months of evenings and
Yeah.
weekends implementing a new GI system. It's a pretty rare skill set, so it's just waiting, and I anticipate it to be a long time before somebody picks it up. We're still implementing bug fixes and maintaining SDFGI. I think SDFGI is still a great technique, and it works for a lot of games. So we're in no particular rush, but yeah, it'll be a while, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's good that that was the first question because it's one that I got asked a lot. But it's good that when people click on the video about the rendering Q&A, we got the answer first. Okay, and then he continues with another one would be if you guys plan on improving shadow quality, maybe using motion vectors more to rotate the shadow samples like you already do with the T-threading pattern PR, and more importantly, performance.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of ideas for shadows. I mean, that particular suggestion using motion vectors to rotate the shadow samples is something that we added in 4.5 already, actually. So that's already done, and it does improve the quality if you have TAA enabled. Um, Performance, though, is still something that requires a lot of work. There actually is some ongoing work right now on shadow performance, and there's going to be quite a bit more coming up. Um, I probably have, if you look at the rendering roadmap, I probably have 5 different notes about performance improvements we can make to shadows. Um, quite a few things we can do and are slowly chipping away at. So yeah, I would say we definitely plan on improving shadow quality and performance. A big one that I would like to do for 4.7 is adding contact shadows for directional lights. I'm not certain about doing omni lights or spotlights yet, but directional lights, it's a little more feasible. And it would open up some architectural changes that I think could help drastically improve performance of directional light. So that's something I'd definitely like to see, ideally in 4.7.
Great. Yeah, I think there was some questions about also later about contact shadows, but yeah,
Hmm.
let's move forward. Now we have questions from Sang Xiangen, or however you say that. Could you add a GPU version of Heights cooling, which I don't know what that is? This is an essential feature for very large scenes. You can extend it from multi-mesh.
So high Z culling is a pretty common technique for occlusion culling, specifically for um, uh, GPU-driven rendering workloads. It can be used outside of a GPU-driven rendering context, but uh, the performance is not as good. It comes with a lot more overhead, and the latency is really bad. If you use it without outside of a GPU driven renderer, instead of one frame of latency, sorry, max of one frame of latency, you have a guaranteed 3 frames of latency, which means you get a lot of popping in and out. Performance isn't that great, and it's a heavy GPU performance cost. Uh, Typically, Godot games are GPU performance bound, so we gain a lot by shifting workloads to the CPU. So right now, our occlusion culling system is using Embry for ray tracing. It's very similar to Intel's masked occlusion culling technique. It's very fast, it's very efficient, and it works on all rendering backends. So I don't see us switching to High Z anytime soon. Now, we are talking about one day having a GPU driven renderer. And in that case, we would use High Z because it makes a lot of sense when you have a GPU driven renderer. But when you're using a traditional CPU driven forward plus renderer, the performance benefits aren't there, the quality isn't there. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us, even though it is a pretty standard technique these days.
Cool, cool. Yeah, the second part of the question, which I believe is unrelated, is could you improve the optimization features of GLS Lang for shaders? This would allow for the large scale removal of invalid code and improve the loading performance of shader variants.
Yeah, we have no plans to work on GLS Lang itself. It's a third party project. It's an open source project, and people can contribute to that. I think probably for us, it would be taking on too much to take on the maintenance of third party dependencies. That being said, I think probably the intention of the question is less to ask about GLS Lang itself and more to ask about what we can do to improve loading performance of shaders. And we actually are, ideally this week, about to merge something called ReSpearV, which is another third-party library, but it's made by a contributor, Dario, who's also the guy who worked on our Uber shaders, our acyclic render graph, a real rendering wizard. He created this project for another project that he contributes to. But basically, what it does is it takes your Spear V, which is the result from GLS Lang, and it runs dead code elimination, code inlining, and some other optimizations like that. And then once we are about to compile a pipeline, it takes the specialization constants for that pipeline and it folds them in and then does another pass of dead code elimination. And what this means is the actual SpearV code that we send to the GPU driver is minimized and it's already optimized. And that allows the GPU driver to spend a lot less time compiling the shader. Uh, in a perfect world, this optimization wouldn't make a difference at all. But unfortunately, GPU driver code is not always optimized. They're written assuming that you're going to do a big loading screen at the beginning of the game, compiling shaders for 30 minutes on the first time you launch the game, which is what we see in a lot of AAA games. So they haven't prioritized shader compiling performance.
Hmm.
So we've added this, and it does on NVIDIA and AMD. It leads to about a 10% improvement in shader compiling times. And on Adreno mobile GPUs, it can be much higher. And in some cases, it's literally twice as fast to load shaders. So it worked out. It's a really nice optimization that worked out quite well, and we should be included in 4.6, but it hasn't been merged yet.
Okay, so something else to wait for.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of people are asking things on the chat. Thank you. Like I will keep adding them to the bottom of the file. We try to get to all of them. I'm here scrolling the current question if we want to know where we are at for the people who joined right now. Okay, we have another one very short. IES lights when?
I don't know. That's something that'll be when people contribute it. IES lights, for people who aren't aware, are similar to like a texture you apply to lights that give the beam of light, or if it's an omni light, the whole circumference of the light, a shape. And so they're used in like architectural visualization a lot, because actual lights don't just have this uniform round glow. They're brighter in certain directions than others. IES, I don't even remember what the acronym stands for, but it's an international standard um, for how you kind of represent what those spikes of brightness look like. If you go to any light bulb manufacturer, they have the IES profiles for every light bulb that they sell. So
Interesting.
if you're doing architectural visualization and you want to show somebody what their dream home is going to look like, you're even going to pick out the light bulbs that you'll put into this thing, and you want to visualize the exact way that they shine light. It's great. But it also makes rendering your lights way more expensive. And sometimes it's really, really subtle. So, to what extent, every game dev is going to be using these depends. Some people come from a background where it's a really common workflow and they're really missing out. If you don't know that this exists, you're probably not missing it, especially since we have light projector textures. So you can basically, not basically, you can achieve the same effect with light projector textures, but the IES profile is encoded in a particular way. And if you want to use an IES profile directly from a manufacturer, you need to have support for that. And that's what we don't support. So we would need to add that. But I'm personally in no rush to add it. So um,
Yeah.
if somebody contributes it, we'll have it. But nobody's really been interested in contributing. So we'll see.
Yeah.
When, I don't know. If somebody contributes it, then I'll review their code and help them get it through. But if nobody really, if nobody's interested, then
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about it.
Seems interesting, but yeah, like maybe not for a game. Okay, let's move on because I see many more questions piling on. But we have here from Akumoid. How are the shaders templates going? Is there a plan to introduce them in Godot 4.6, maybe 4.7? I have been really excited about them since Bastian showed them on stream. And then continues, there would be so much stuff that we could do with them that it's now impossible to do. And then he gives some examples.
Yeah, so it's gone really well. Bastian had a bit of time to work on them last year, and then was quite busy with XR stuff, and he's come back to work on them again. Unfortunately, since it's been a year and we merged Uber shaders last year and stuff like that, he's had to do a lot of work just to get things back up to date. The last time I talked to him about them was 2 weeks ago, and they're basically on track to have like a minimal version merged soon. Something that's not going to be like super generally useful for everyone, but it's going to be more of like a proof of concept that we'd like to get out into people's hands so we can start getting feedback. Basically, from a technical perspective, the technology is there and it works, but we're not totally certain on the workflow. So the plan is to merge something that has a strong foundation and has a workflow we think is good, but we're going to merge it as experimental and ask for a ton of feedback, with the plan being that in subsequent releases, we will either completely redesign it or tweak it or improve it. But we're going to merge it with what we think is a suboptimal workflow and then plan on improving it in subsequent releases so we can get something that we know works for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Would be nice maybe also to have Bastian someday on a future stream.
Hmm.
All right. So this one you already mentioned a little bit, but Nitro LP is, instead of a question, it's more of a prayer, praying for contact shadows one day.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Is there any status on this, or just like a would be nice?
Would be nice. I mean, if I magically have some free time, I would love to do it, but I'm not hopeful that I'll have enough time. But it's something I'd really like to see in 4.7, because it goes along with a lot of other shadow optimizations I'd like to see.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Then we go to Sandredarium. Curious if there has been any progress on the topic of asset streaming or any idea being thrown around. Last time around Godot, it was stated that nothing was really being done.
Yeah, so good news is somebody decided to work on texture streaming specifically. I don't know what asset streaming is specifically asking about, whether it's generally assets. There is asset streaming where you can stream in packed scenes, or mesh streaming, streaming in meshes or whatever. Texture streaming is being worked on. That's something I talked about at GodotCon last year. A contributor is working on it, has shown a proof of concept both on our rendering chat and in a rendering meeting, and it's looking really good. It's looking kind of quite close to being ready. I don't think it's going to be ready for 4.6 because we're going to be going into feature freeze in a couple of weeks. But it's something that's looking really, really well done. So I'm hoping we'll have that in a release soon.
That's great. Thanks for everybody asking for it, which is also one of the recurrent topics, the asset streaming. So yeah, we get a follow up asking here: is it virtual texturing? Ask Renber B3000.
Is it virtual texturing? No. Virtual texturing is a kind of orthogonal concept. It can go hand in hand with texture streaming, but it's not necessary. And virtual texturing comes with its own can of worms. Um, we have no plans for virtual texturing right now.
All right. So I think those were the questions that were left on the forum. I go now to some of them that we got on the chat. Continuing with Renurb. Hey, it was nice meeting you on Godot Fest. A few quick questions. Is there some plans for a runtime light mapping for runtime editors? And two, are there plans on geometry shaders?
Oh, so the answer for both is no. We don't we don't have any intention to support runtime light mapping. I mean, it could be interesting if somebody were to work on that. But right now, our light mapper is fully designed to be offline. So it does a lot of GPU readback. It also does a lot of long running processes that would that can freeze for minutes or hours if you have a large scene and really high quality settings. And the low quality settings are very low quality. So doing that at runtime, it's not really something that we're open to without a significant overhaul of our light mapper to support that. I know there's been some discussion of just adding a function that lets you bake light maps at runtime, but because the actual light mapper isn't designed for that, it's not a workflow that we want to promote, because inevitably day one someone's going to ship a game with it, find out that on some computer, instead of taking 30 seconds to bake their little level, it's going to take 5 minutes, and then they're going to go to us and say, you need to fix that. And we're going to say, no. And then we've got a feature out there that just doesn't work. It works on the dev's machine, but not on their players' machines, and that's something we avoid. So I would love to see it overhauled to support some sort of progressive rendering or some like optimized runtime mode. But in its current state, I don't see that happening anytime soon. The second question was, are there any plans to support geometry shaders? And the answer is no. Geometry shaders had a very short lifetime in the GPU world, and they were never supported on mobile devices. They're not supported on Apple devices. They were never supported on Apple devices. Um, and now, like modern GPUs don't support them anymore either. So I don't see that ever happening. It's a really nice workflow, and there's still a lot of tutorials and stuff out there that suggest using geometry shaders, but it's already a legacy deprecated uh, type of shader. So I don't see us adopting that anytime.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. There's way too many things that I had no idea about, so it's a lot to study after the Q&A. Let's go to the next question by Dustin Hitzing. Are we going to get an improved ambient occlusion? What about pre-made compositor effects like the standard material, but for the compositor?
Um, yeah, we've had on our list of priorities improving ambient occlusion. Some work is being done just to port directly GTAO to Godot. I'm not sure where that work will go because, of course, just a raw port of like XE GTAO, for example, um, will make our ambient occlusion way slower, excuse me, and reliant on TAA, which is not something that we want. But we would like to see some improvements to ambient occlusion. So I'm not sure when or what that'll look like, but it's definitely something um, that I'm interested in and would like to see done. What about pre-made compositor effects like the standard material, but for the compositor? I don't think so. We've been talking about shipping some built-in effects as compositor effects. There's been talk of having like motion blur as a compositor effect that's just built into the engine, and you select it from a drop-down list of compositor effects. Um, I don't expect to see anything like the standard material as a compositor effect. I don't know what that would look like in general, but our goal with compositor effects really is twofold. One is to allow the full expression of what you can do with the rendering device for users to use in the engine, and then two is to promote an ecosystem of assets and plugins and things like that. Um, so I would expect that to be more of a downloadable asset from the asset store once we have the asset store rather than something we ship with. If you want a material that does everything and has a bunch of toggles, then that's what the standard material is for. I don't see us duplicating that work, but we'll see. That's the first time anyone's asked about that. If that turns out to be something that a lot of people find useful, then maybe. We're always open to changing our minds if enough people, convince us. So so we'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah. It's good to actually uh, get in touch with the community in terms of like if you have any questions or proposals, you can always open proposals, like share what your issues are in your projects, because otherwise it's really hard for us to know what you want. So okay, let's go to next one. Have Emilio here on the chat asking, do we have plans to allow for custom clipping planes to allow for portal rendering without having the camera clip?
Oh, that's a good follow up to the last question because this is an area where we have changed our mind. Originally, when people were asking for this, we were kind of like, no, it doesn't really fit within our current rendering architecture. So, no. But the demand for custom, really, it's a custom projection matrix where you could specify your own clipping planes has been huge. And when we're hearing from lots of different teams who have different use cases, a lot of people who are making actual games that they are going to ship and sell to customers that need this. And so our thinking as the rendering team has flipped, and it's now something that we have plans to support. We've discussed what the design will look like. We have a nice design specification, and it's just waiting for somebody to do the work. So um, yes, we do have plans to allow for custom clipping planes to allow for portal rendering without having the camera clip.
Nice, nice to hear. Um, okay, we have here, excuse me, Carpenter asking, are there any plans to improve easing alpha in Godot? And then explains a bit more. Uh,
Um, Yeah, no immediate plans. It sounds like the person asking the question isn't familiar with Canvas Group Node or the Clip Children option on Node 2D, both of which are used for erasing alpha from other sprites. Um, the workflow is more cumbersome than I would like. I think it's because it's kind of backwards from what you would typically want. I think what a lot of people, um, well, I'm not going to go into too many technical details. Look into the Canvas group node and Canvas clip on Node 2D. Any Node 2D or most Node 2Ds support it, and that should be pretty close to what you're looking for. It's a lot more lightweight than using viewports, for example, but I will admit the workflow is not perfect. So give it a look and see what you think.
all right. Then we have N, who's quite active on the chat here, asking any plans to improve light probe authoring and light leaking? Something like Unity's tool for APV for doing stuff like displacing probes, invalidating probes, etc.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there are any concrete plans. Because there hasn't been any discussion or anything about this. We merged some improvements for light probe placement and light probe leaking in 4.4, I think, and that went a long way. I think a lot of those tools aren't well known, so it's possible that some of this stuff um, is already done, like light probe authoring. uh, I don't know of what's missing. You're able to manually place and move light probes around. You're able to disable light probes that are contributing to leaking. Um, so not sure what else would be needed. There is still some problematic light leaking, but nobody to my knowledge is working on resolving that. So again, would be a nice to have, but not something that's being actively worked on.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen some questions here which I will skip because they were too general. If you have a question, try to be a little bit more specific because, like otherwise we're going to be uh, going into weird territory.
Yeah, and I can talk all day. So
Yeah.
if you give me too broad of a question, then no more questions will get answered.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one, which you already talked about, texture streaming. So I think that one it's already covered.
Yeah.
The next one by Deepak Taleng. Do we have any plans to improve 3D rendering performance and visual quality for mobile devices?
Yeah, I mean we've done a huge amount of work um, for improving uh, performance on mobile devices in the last couple releases. Um, yeah, I mean there's a lot. I don't know if you've been testing, but you know, there's been a huge increase in performance, especially on Adreno and ARM devices. Dario, who I mentioned before, has been doing a huge amount of work improving performance on Adreno devices, specifically for the Quest 3. But the optimizations he's done have been generally applicable for all mobile devices, and then extra good on Adreno. Um, that work is funded by Meta, of course, who wants Quest 3 to run really well. And then we've also done a lot of work to improve performance on ARM devices. And that's just because improving performance on ARM devices is a lot easier. They have really good tools, and they provide us a lot of support, just in terms of having engineers who are available that we can ask questions and who will give us very specific feedback. So for those of you who follow the engine a lot, you'll know that I wrote a couple blog posts on the ARM blog a few months back on optimizing 3D performance on mobile devices using the ARM tools. I also spoke about that process at GDC this past year, and ARM being really nice folks, just donated to the foundation, and I'm not sure what tier they're at, but they're now a corporate sponsor of the foundation as well. So lots of good work going on in that area is the short answer.
Yeah, yeah. We'd like to thank ARM for the sponsorship. Okay, going to the next question. Juan Manuel Costello asks, is there plans to update the BRDF shader to one with higher quality? Sounds
Uh,
ambitious. I don't know what that is, but
it's funny. BRDF sounds like this really terrifying thing, but it's like 5 lines of code. Um, it's really not a whole lot. No, there's no plans to use a higher quality BRDF. We're using the same GGX that Unreal Engine uses and Unity uses, and every single other. Well, no, I shouldn't say every single other, but we're almost everybody uses the Disney BRDF for GGX. What you're seeing more now, especially in AAA, is having more specialized BRDFs for specialized purposes. So you'll have like an eye BRDF, skin BRDF, teeth BRDF, hair BRDF, hard surface material BRDF, foliage BRDF, and using a specialized one for each purpose, and not just using the Disney GGX for everything. Um, I don't think we'll do that. Like we support for diffuse, we support Burley and or and Nair, which you know together cover most of the BRDFs that you'll see for diffuse, other than these hyper specialized ones. But I don't see us adding any hyper specialized ones because they're too game content specific. Um, yeah, so I don't see us doing that anytime soon. Um, I think we're going to see more benefits from improving other aspects of lighting rather than trying to tweak the BRDFs because we're already using the same ones that everybody else does, and we're a general purpose engine, so it makes sense for us just to have the ones that cover 99% of materials, and then let people write light shaders for the other ones. And that's what light shaders exist for. It's for dropping in your own BRDF. So once we have shader templates, it makes it really easy to just drop in code like that. I think we'll all be happy.
nice. Okay, let's jump to the next one. Mogul Viol asks, which game showcases the rendering capabilities of Godot best? Which I know is very general, but I would ask you, for you, which is the one that you like the most?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. That is very subjective because rendering capabilities. Normally, when people ask that, they're saying, show me the most hyper realistic looking
Exactly.
game that's
Yeah.
being made, and I'll judge it on how much it looks like Call of Duty. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and as somebody who spends a lot of time thinking about rendering, I don't feel that way. I love that we have a mix of styles, and I really like stylized rendering. Now that being said, uh, I think the thing with the most kind of mass market crowd appeal is PVKK by Bip and Bits.
Yeah.
There's a few trailers online. You can look it up and see. And if you watch the screen behind Emmy, you'll see it eventually.
Sure.
Um, maybe not in the highest quality, but it'll be there. I think it's shaping up to look really really nice. Really nice kind of blend of stylized realism and uh, and I think has a very wide mass market appeal. So I think that one in general. But there's a lot of other games in the back of my mind that I think really show off, what you can do. That's not just you know realistic PBR
Yeah.
assets. But
Yeah. I know that it's getting a little bit of tiresome by now, but the style that the retro kind of style is working very well. People have been
mhm,
refining it a lot, and one of the same artists, Pixter, is also working in engraving, which does not look like PBKK. It's kind of like a 3D lo-fi pixelated kind of thing, and it looks incredible.
yeah.
So yeah, it's the spectrum.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah. Sorry. Excuse me for this. Okay, the next question, which is also kind of on the same, very generalistic, which is I cannot read your name. I'm sorry, but what does the Godot engine currently lack in its renderer to achieve the same visual fidelity of features as Unreal Engine and Unity HDRP? Which I assume this is asking, like, what's the missing piece? I
Yeah.
think we could answer that there isn't a single thing, right? But I don't know if you want to cover more or less like the are we aiming to get there eventually? Is that something that's interesting or not? Because it comes up quite often. So
Yeah, I mean it's a funny question because there's no one answer. Um, if you were to take this exact same 3D model and open it in all three engines and tweak the lighting conditions to be the same, um, it's going to look very, very similar. Uh, the problem with Godot is twofold. One is we default to running well on low end devices rather than looking good on high end devices. And both HDRP and Unreal default to having all of the fancy features turned on, and they default to all the high end settings. And in Godot, if you turn those things on, you can achieve basically the same effect, but you have to turn them on. And a lot of people don't, either because they don't know they're there or because they're happy with their current looks and performance trade-off. But we offer a different experience out of the box, and we require more work from the user and more knowledge to achieve that high-end um, looking stuff. Now, that's a double-edged sword for the other engines. If you actually want a well-performing game in HDRP, you have to do a lot of work to cut things out and reduce visual quality in order to achieve performance goals. And you don't have to do that as much on with Godot. With Godot, it's more like you turn on SSR, it doesn't look that good, and it costs a lot. So then you have to turn it off before you release your game.
yeah,
Versus if you were using another engine, it would be on by default, and then you would have to turn it off. So uh, I'm not sure that there's any one feature that we would just add and it would achieve
yeah,
the same visual fidelity. Like I mentioned before, we use the same BRDFs that they do. So for a scene that only uses direct lighting and has no post processing, no VFX, nothing like that, it's going to look the same. Um, One area where both of those engines do have a huge step up over Godot is their post processing workflow. Godot has a handful of built in effects like SSAO, like glow, and things like that. But both Unity and Unreal have a really nice ecosystem of like drop in this post processing effect and some really fancy stuff out there. People chain together effects for some really, really nice looking graphics. And we don't have that. So, you know, a better or bigger post processing ecosystem would probably help some Godot games really pop. But I think that's probably
Yeah,
the one feature that we don't have that those other ones do, and it makes a difference. But again, you can do post processing in Godot. It's just we don't have as many templates out there, and it's more work.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
even if you're going to do everything yourself, totally custom, it's more work in Godot. So
yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah, no, I think like giving more access to those sort of things would be beneficial. But also, yeah, what you mentioned about the defaults has been also in the discourse lately, right? Like the typical Unreal look, and how developers just go with that, and then they might not have optimized it enough for when the release comes, and it doesn't run too well in many devices, which is quite
yeah.
the opposite of what we are trying to get in most of our basic templates. But yeah, okay, we have like 10 minutes left, so let's go quickly if we can. Web GPU when?
I don't know. There
Let's.
was some really good work happening on it last year from a contributor, but he never shared his code and stopped working on it. So we're back to square one. Um, so
Yeah,
we'll see. It's not a huge priority yet because it's still not that well supported across browsers. But we designed the rendering device API to support web GPUs, so we'll have it eventually.
yeah, yeah. Okay, another one that's a bit more general, but goes more deep into how things get done. Is the oldest pull request that is topic rendering is from 2020, with its last update 2024. Do you see any way to move forward such old PRs, or do you think those should be closed for good?
This is a whole can of worms.
Yeah,
I I don't think they should necessarily be closed for good. Some of them maybe, but PRs being open is kind of a nice thing because a lot of times people are adding features that make sense for their game, but maybe don't make sense for us to merge into the engine. We can't merge every single feature that people need or want. If we did, Godot would become really hard to maintain, really bloated, really slow. And so we have to keep the core of the engine just features that we think everybody needs or a huge number of people need. And so a lot of times we expect that people will uh, modify the engine to suit their needs, and that's good. And we hope that they'll share that code with other people. And opening a pull request is one way of doing that. Getting eyes on it, and then it also makes it a little bit easier for people to download your code changes and use it in their own fork of the engine. So I foresee some PRs just remaining open forever, and people being able to benefit from that code. And I like that. I think that's a really healthy part of this ecosystem. I don't know about that specific PR off the top of my head. I mean,
yeah,
I review dozens of PRs every week, and I can't really stay on top of PR from 2020 that was last updated in 2024.
yeah,
But um, so yeah, who knows?
yeah, yeah. No, I think it was more like an example, but yeah. Okay, Sam Villa, would we be getting some RTX or real ray tracing in Godot and not just SSR?
Yes, eventually. I'd really like to see like ray traced ambient occlusion and or ray traced shadows in our current Forward Plus renderer. Um, we won't have ray traced reflections or ray traced GI until we write a new GPU driven renderer. And the reason for that is ray traced reflections and ray traced GI basically require using what's called a bindless renderer architecture, which the Forward Plus renderer is not, and we don't intend to move to bindless because we'd be cutting off a lot of devices by doing that. Um, but without a bindless render architecture, it becomes really painful and inefficient to do ray traced reflections or GI. So basically, we're waiting until we write a newer, high end, futuristic renderer, which is something that we've been talking about, but frankly, just don't have the resources to do. and we've been working on that.
Would that
But yeah,
be Godot 5 material, or is that something that
no,
eventually could make it to Godot 4?
no, it could be Godot 4 because it would just be another renderer that sits beside the existing three. So
Okay.
the feature set would be able to be a little bit different, and the design would be totally different. So we'd be able to make a different trade-off in terms of what devices are supported. If we did a modern renderer, only modern devices would be supported. So only things from within the last, I don't know, five or 8 years would be supported, rather than supporting devices from early 2010s, which we currently do. The ones that support Vulkan anyway. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I expect to see that eventually, but not anytime soon, because it's going to be really hard to force into our current renderer design. Other ambient occlusion and shadows would be a lot easier, and I'd like to see that. Ray trace shadows would be a really nice addition. Um, but but yeah, for other things, not for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Respite from Reality asks, are there plans to support newer versions of FSR and DLSS XESS? And I believe, yeah, those basically they have different licenses, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all closed source now. FSR, the newest version of FSR is closed source, and then DLSS and XESS have always been closed source. So I would say yes, we have plans. The plan has always been to expose hooks so that people can make plugins that use them. We can't include them in Godot because they're not open source. So that's just a limitation of being an open source project. We want to have a plugin that lets you use it, and uh, potentially that plugin could look similar to what we have for OIDN, Open Image Denoiser, which is you go to a project setting, or so you download the SDK for that thing, drop it into your project, go to a project setting, and then point it to the SDK. That's something that is on the table, but yeah. So yes, there's plans to support them, but not built in. It'll always be something where you have to download the SDK separately.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. We're getting closer to the end, so let's see if we can get the final ones. The Hyper ask, FSR 1.0 has been broken for a long while. Any plans to fix it? It's already been implemented both officially and as screen shaders from others.
I didn't know it was broken. I don't. If there's a bug report, I would love to see it. If there's no bug report, then it's not going to get fixed. Please open a bug report. But
Exactly.
I personally, I haven't seen a bug report about FSR for a long time. So, um, if I've somehow missed that, feel free to hop on the rendering chat and send a link. Otherwise, please open a bug report.
Excellent. Okay. Have Delt asking, any progress on implementing a mesh RD like resource that allows to generate and modify mesh data directly on the GPU via compute shaders or alternative access storage buffers from shaders?
I don't think so. I don't think anyone's working on that. So any progress? No. If no one's working on it, then just by default, there's no progress. I took a stab at it at one point and made a proof of concept that's linked on the proposal, uh, but I wasn't really super happy with the usability of it. It's If we do support something like Mesh RD, it's going to be very limited, which may be fine. But yeah, somebody needs to get their hands dirty and try to figure out what an optimal design would look like. And I don't think anyone's working on it. So no, I would say there's no progress.
All right. Juan Manuel Costello again asking, is there any plans to update the BRDF shader? That one I already,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
probably,
yeah, we've already answered that one.
yeah, okay,
It looks like it just got in there twice.
yeah. Okay, to clarify my question on the compositor effects, I was not talking about a huge effect with everything. I mean a list of effects that I can choose from to add, like pixelization, vignette, etc.
Oh, no,
Which,
no. That's what I was talking about before. It'd be nice to
yeah,
have that stuff in the asset store to download,
yeah.
but no, we have no plans to support that.
Passive Star, I don't know who that person is asking, I'm late. Has anybody already asked about plans for rendering pipeline extensibility? We need to be able to implement custom GI solutions and so on.
Hmm. So you actually can implement custom GI solutions already using compositor effects. That's what it exists for, and it's already supported. As of when did we merge those? 4.2, 4.3 maybe. But that's exactly what compositor effects are for, and the API is already there to do custom GI if you want to.
All right. Then we have another one by Saul. When will we have a new rendering team update blog, which is interesting.
I've had a draft for 6 months now that I haven't finished. Um, yeah, it's a tough thing because it's a lot of work to write those blog posts, and I don't have a lot of free time these days, and you know eh, when I if I spend an evening working on the blog post, then I don't spend an evening reviewing and giving feedback on PRs, which means we get less rendering features or bug fixes or whatever for the next version. So um, I would I'm I'm working very hard to have a post out this month. I'm not going to promise that I'll have a post out this month, but I have put some more time into it this week, and hoping to get it out soon.
Yeah, and we also have other ways of communicating with people like this Q&A, which I really appreciate your time for here being like almost an hour now, answering questions and letting people know what the rendering team is working on. So yeah, it's a little bit of a team update, even if it's really not a blog post.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I think that would be the last one is, are there any plans for adding some form of ambient occlusion, GTAO, to the mobile renderer?
Yes, we actually just added SSAO to the compatibility renderer, and the same person who added SSAO to the compatibility renderer is now working on an SSAO for the mobile renderer. We're not planning on using GTAO. GTAO is a great algorithm, but it's made for modern devices. It's made for dedicated GPUs. You can run it on a mobile renderer if you take advantage of TAA and heavy temporal reprojection, and you're willing to basically only support higher end mobile phones. We're looking at doing something that's going to be a lot lower quality, but a lot more efficient, and not rely on TAA. So, um, yeah, it's being worked on.
Cool.
Is the thing. I don't know when it'll be finished. Hopefully for 4.7. Um, but yeah, we'll have that eventually.
Nice. Well, thank you so much again for your time. If there's anything that you would like to tell people that's interested in contributing to rendering, where they should go, or what sort of things we're
Yeah, I
lacking the
mean,
most. But
if you're interested in contributing to rendering, I would join the Rocket chat.godotengine.org, and join the rendering channel. You can also attend the weekly meetings. We do one at a EU North America friendly time zone, and then another one in an Australia North America friendly time zone. So definitely get involved there. But the biggest thing is looking out at the issue tracker and fixing bug reports. That's the best way to get started contributing to the renderer. If your goal is to get started by implementing some fancy new feature, the reality is most likely it's going to be extremely hard, and you're going to run into a roadblock and then stop having fun. And so I always recommend start with bug fixes. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Uh, Work on small bug fixes to get familiar with the renderer first, and then take on bigger tasks once you've got your legs under you, and you know you understand the architecture of the renderer, you understand the rendering device API, that sort of thing. And then it's a lot easier to work on bigger stuff. but we would love to have more help because very few people contribute to the renderer, and you know it's a pretty big part of the engine.
It's a
So
hot topic, yes.
yeah, we definitely need a lot of help.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your questions, for being there. I'll see you in the next week stream, and always online, I guess. So goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.